So, when you think of anthropology, what comes to mind? Probably the study of human cultures, right? A science that's all about understanding our amazing diversity. But what if I told you that for most of its history, that very science has been, well, a pretty one-sided conversation?
And that really gets to the heart of what we're digging into today. For a long time, the answer to who gets to tell a culture story was, well, it was pretty straightforward. But that's all changing. And as you're about to see, it's cracking open this whole field and revealing two very different worlds hiding inside of it. Okay, so to really get a handle on these two worlds, we've got to rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the very foundation of anthropology, and you'll find that its roots are planted firmly in one part of the globe, the North.
Anthropology didn't just pop up out of thin air. It really started to shape back in the 19th century. And this is key. It grew up right alongside the massive expansion of European colonial powers. It was born in this perfect storm of colonial ambition on one hand, and this new scientific desire to, catalog and understand the world on the other. And this tradition, this northern tradition born in Europe and North America, it's still, even today, considered the main trunk of the anthropology tree.
And this immediately set up a really clear power dynamic. You had the North, which became the home of the observer, the place where, the anthropology was being thought up and written down. And then you had the South. The South was basically seen as the object of study, the place to be studied. It was this, quote, privileged field for anthropological research. So right from the get-go, you had this very clear division of labor.
And this leads to a huge, kind of uncomfortable contradiction, right? The same civilization that's creating this whole new science dedicated to studying cultural diversity is also, at the exact same time, working pretty hard to get rid of it through colonization, missionary work, and all that. It's this deep, deep irony that's baked right into the discipline's DNA.
So, what's the big deal? What actually happens when one part of the world does all the talking and the other is basically just the subject? Well, you get this massive imbalance. And it's not just about power, it's about what we even consider to be knowledge.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It leads to what scholars call a silencing. See, when anthropologists from the global South started to develop their own academic traditions, their work often wasn't taken seriously. It wasn't seen as original. Instead, it was kind of dismissed as just an echo or a diluted version of the real science coming out of the big universities in the North.
It was seen as totally derivative. Like, imagine the knowledge produced in the South was just seen as a copy, an extension of the real ideas from the North. It was like a branch on the main tree, sure, but it could never be its own tree.
So, of course, this meant it got rated as second class. You get this really paternalistic attitude where scholars and their work from the South were basically treated as junior varsity. Good, but not quite good enough to make the main team.
They were essentially treated as permanent apprentices. Imagine that, stuck in this role of always learning from these so-called masters of the true anthropology in the North, but never, ever being seen as a master themselves.
And the end result of all of this? The unique voices, the crucial insights, the groundbreaking work of an entire half of the world were just effectively silenced.
But, and this is a really big but, that is not where the story ends, not by a long shot. Because those same places that were once just put under the microscope are now building their own labs, so to speak. They've become incredible centers of knowledge in their own right.
The South is not silent. Far from being just an echo, a powerful, distinct intellectual tradition has been roaring to life. And we're not talking about some abstract idea here. This is a real, tangible thing built on a super solid foundation.
I mean, just look at what's happened over the last few decades. There's been an explosion of anthropological infrastructure in the South. We're talking brand new academic institutions, their own specialist journals, amazing museums, major publishing projects, and a huge growth in master's and doctoral programs. It's a completely new landscape for creating knowledge.
Okay, so what is it that actually makes these anthropologies of the South so different? Is it just about where they are on a map? Nope. It's about a fundamentally different way of seeing the world.
All right, here is the absolute core difference. In classical, northern anthropology, the person you're studying, the other, is usually external. They're far away in another country, another culture. But think about it. If you're an anthropologist from, say, Mexico or Brazil, and you're studying an indigenous community in your own country, that other isn't foreign at all. They're your fellow citizens. You're both part of the very same nation, the same political system, the same economy.
And that right there brings us to a really clear definition. These anthropologies of the South are not just knockoffs of the Northern model. They are totally distinct ways of producing and using knowledge because they've been shaped by a completely different reality.
This unique perspective brings up 4 really critical differences. Okay, so first, like we just said, the researchers and the people they study are often citizens of the same country. That changes the game completely. Second, these scholars are often fighting an uphill battle, working in a place where theories imported from the North are automatically seen as more prestigious than homegrown knowledge. Third, the whole idea of otherness is different. It's internal. It's about exploring the diversity and tensions within your own society, not some exotic culture far away. And finally, and this is so important, they're rediscovering their own intellectual ancestors. They're reclaiming these local thinkers who were once brushed off as amateurs just because they didn't have a fancy degree from Europe or America, and recognizing them as the pioneers they really were.
So where are we going with all this? What's the point of recognizing these different traditions? What's the end game?
Now, it is absolutely crucial to get this next part. The goal here is not to create some kind of anti-Northern anthropology. This isn't about tearing down the old house to build a new one. It's about adding a whole new wing. It's about addition, not replacement.
The real goal here is to finally get past this unilinear idea, this outdated notion that anthropology has just one single story, a story that started in the North and then just kind of spread out. By bringing these other traditions into the conversation as equals, we can finally start to build a richer, more complete, a truly planetary science of humanity, a science that is, at last, as diverse as the very people it's trying to understand.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. You know, this whole story isn't just about anthropology. This dynamic, this pattern of a dominant northern tradition and a quieter southern one, it plays out in so many other fields. So the real question for you to take away is this. What other parts of what you know about the world might have been shaped by the same hidden divide?